If God is our shepherd, why does following him sometimes lead us directly into a valley? Well, because a good shepherd knows that sometimes the only way to reach the next green pasture is through dangerous terrain. The sheep cannot see the destination. They don't know what is hiding in the shadows or how long the journey will last. They only know their shepherd, and they trust him. And that may be exactly where some of us are today. We cannot see where this path is leading, but our shepherd can. Hi, my name is Shelley Junkin, and I am part of the Rooted Toolshed. We are continuing our journey through Psalm 23 with a verse that has taken on a very deeply personal meaning for me and my family. Psalm 23:4, and even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. There's one word in this verse I don't want us to miss. That word is through. You see, David doesn't say, even though I make my home in the valley. He says, even though I walk through the valley. The valley may be part of our journey, but it is not our final destination. The shepherd knows the route. A shepherd sometimes had to move his flock through narrow, shadowed valleys to reach fresh pastures and water. These valleys could be dangerous. Predators could hide among the rocks. There could be steep drop-offs and dark crevices, places where frightened sheep could easily become separated from the flock. The sheep could not see the entire route or what might be waiting around that next corner, but the shepherd knew. The sheep didn't need a map. They needed to remain close to their shepherd, listen for his voice, and follow him. And that is such an important lesson for all of us. We want God to give us the map. We often want him to explain where we're going, why it's happening, and exactly how everything will turn out in the end. But often, God doesn't hand us a map, but he gives us something more important. He gives us himself. Our responsibility is not to understand every turn in the road. It's simply to remain close to the shepherd who does. The safest place is not always the easiest path, but the safest place is wherever our shepherd is. David doesn't say that there's nothing frightening in the valley. After all, he says there's real danger there, the valley of the shadow of death. His confidence comes from knowing that his shepherd is with him. Our confidence is not in the safety of our surroundings or circumstances. Our confidence comes from knowing that we have the presence of our shepherd leading us. And did you notice the change in David's language? In the first part of Psalm 23, David talks about the shepherd. He makes me lie down. He leads me. He refreshes my soul. But when David enters that valley, he begins talking directly to his shepherd. You are with me. There is something about the valley that makes the presence of God deeply personal. Now, before we go any further, I think it's important to acknowledge that not all valleys are the same. Some valleys are part of the path that our shepherd is faithfully leading us through. They come through illness, grief, loss, disappointment, or circumstances we never chose for ourselves. But sometimes, like sheep, we wander into valleys through choices of our own. Now, I don't say that to bring shame or make anyone feel condemned, because I have done that myself. I say it because it reveals something beautiful about the heart of our shepherd. His presence is available to us even when we are the ones who've wandered. Sometimes we become distracted. We stop listening, or we follow something that looked right at the time. And then we look around and realize, we're somewhere we were never meant to be. But even then, our shepherd doesn't abandon us. In Luke 15:3-7, Jesus tells us about a shepherd who had 100 sheep and realized one was missing. The shepherd went after that lost sheep until he found it. And when he found it, he rejoiced. He didn't stand at a distance and say, oh, well, you got yourself into this mess, so go find your own way home. The shepherd went after that sheep. We are that sheep. Maybe we are in a valley because of something that happened to us. Maybe our shepherd is leading us through a difficult season that is part of our journey we don't understand. Or maybe, if we're honest, some of our own decisions help bring us to that valley. However we entered the valley, we can call out to our shepherd. We are not too far away. We have not made too many wrong turns, and we do not have to find our own way back by ourselves. Whether the shepherd led us through the valley or came searching for us after we all wandered into it ourselves, our response should still be the same. Call out to him, listen for his voice, and remain close and follow. Our shepherd knows how we arrived in this valley, and he knows exactly what we need there. But sometimes the valley has nothing to do with the wrong decision. Sometimes it's a painful circumstance we would have never chosen for ourselves or family, and we cannot control. This is the kind of valley my brother Todd and our family have been walking through. We've talked about Todd. He's living with stage 4 cancer for more than 6 years. Our family has prayed, hoped, waited, received difficult news, celebrated victories, and then faced more uncertainty. I would never minimize his valley by wrapping it in a quick, tidy answer. We are praying and believing for God to heal him here on earth. We want more time with him. We want the miracle, and we will continue pleading the blood of Christ for it. But Todd also understands that as a follower of Jesus, his ultimate healing is certain. The question is not whether he will ultimately be healed, but whether that healing will happen here on earth as we're praying, or when he stands completely restored in the presence of Jesus. Revelations 21:4 promises that a day is coming when there will be no more death, mourning, crying, or pain. Todd has said that he trusts his shepherd with his outcome. His eyes are on his shepherd, not because the valley is painless or because he knows what happens next, but because he trusts the character and presence of the one walking with him. Trusting God does not mean we won't grieve or struggle or pray desperately for a different outcome. It means our hope is greater than what we can presently see. Sometimes trusting the shepherd means believing he knows the way, even when the path is not leading where we desperately want it to go. The promise of Psalm 23 is not that every earthly valley will end up exactly as we hope in those green pastures. No, the promise is that our shepherd will be with us through it. And for those who belong to Jesus, the valley will never have the final word. As I have watched Todd continue to keep his eyes on his shepherd, I have realized something else. What God does in us during a valley often reaches far beyond us. Todd's faith does not remove the pain of what he is facing, but watching him trust this shepherd is strengthening the faith of the people who love him. His trust is reminding us where to place our own eyes in life when it becomes frightening and uncertain. That doesn't explain why suffering happens, and it doesn't make the suffering itself good, but it shows us one of the ways God can redeem what we endure. The comfort God gives us in the valley can become comfort we carry to someone else. In 2 Corinthians 1:3-4 tells us that God comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort others with the comfort we have received from him. One day we may find ourselves sitting beside someone who is frightened, grieving, or exhausted and realize, I recognize that valley. We may not have every answer, but we can clearly and confidently say, I know our shepherd is faithful. Let me walk beside you while we trust him together. Sometimes the testimony is not simply that God brought us out of the valley. Sometimes the testimony is how faithfully he carried us through it. This is one of the ways God works all things together for good, as he reminds us in Romans 8:28. That doesn't mean that everything that happens is good. Some things are deeply painful and some choices carry consequences, but God can redeem what we regret and use what we've endured. He does not waste our valleys, that is for sure. Even knowing that, we might still wonder, well, what happens next? How long will this valley last? When will we finally see the green pastures ahead? And this reminds me of something Jesus tells us in Matthew 6:34. He tells us not to worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. In other words, we do not need today's grace for tomorrow's imagined trouble. We need today's grace for today's step. You see, God may not show us the entire path through the valley because we don't need the strength for the entire journey all at once. We need just enough light to take us to that next step while we remain close to our shepherd and follow him. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, God tells Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. His grace is sufficient for this moment, not tomorrow, not an hour from now, not 10 minutes from now. His grace is sufficient for this moment, for this appointment, for for this conversation, for this decision, for this next step. And that's it. That's why trusting him is so important. When tomorrow arrives, our shepherd will already be there, and the grace we need will already be there too. We do not have to borrow tomorrow's trouble. We can receive today's grace and live in peace. Call out to him. Listen for his voice. Keep your eyes fixed on him, and take the next step he places in front of you. Before you leave today, I want to invite you to do something practical. Just name the valley you're walking through right now. Write it in your journal, say it aloud to God, or if you're comfortable, you can share it in the comments. Then I want you to open up your Bible and read Psalm 23, but especially Psalm 23:4 aloud. Put an emphasis on the promise of his presence. You are with me. Underline it, highlight it, not because the valley is safe, not because we understand the path, not because we can, already see the pasture ahead, but because our shepherd is present, he is faithful, and he knows the way through. That's so powerful. In our next video, we'll look a little more closely at the shepherd's rod and staff, one of my favorite parts, and see what David says about how those tools brought him comfort in the middle of danger. If today's message encouraged you, would you consider sharing it with someone who might need this reminder today? You never know who might be walking through a valley and needs to hear that they're not walking alone. And if this study helped you draw a little closer to the Good Shepherd, I'd love for you to join me as we continue walking the rest of the way through Psalm 23. My prayer is that each video helps you know him more deeply, trust him more fully, and experience the peace that comes from following the shepherd. Until next time, keep your eyes on Jesus and stay rooted in him.